The story begins in fragments, not with a single revelation, but with a growing sense that something vast had been hidden in plain sight. For years, the name Jeffrey Epstein circulated quietly among the powerful, rarely examined, rarely questioned. He appeared in records as a financier, a philanthropist, a man with connections that seemed unusually broad and unusually protected. According to public records, he moved with ease between worlds that rarely intersect: finance and politics, academia and royalty, private jets and private islands. For a long time, these movements attracted little sustained scrutiny. Silence, in many forms, surrounded him. Documents indicate that Epstein's rise was rapid and, to many observers, difficult to fully explain. He did not leave behind a conventional paper trail that matched the scale of his wealth or his access. Instead, there were gaps. Those gaps became more noticeable only later, when investigators and journalists began looking backward rather than forward. What emerged was not a clear narrative, but a series of names, dates, and locations that suggested something larger than any one individual. The Epstein files, as they would later be described in media reports, are not a single document or archive. They are a collection of court records, flight logs, testimonies, settlements, sealed exhibits, and unsealed fragments. Together, they form a shadowed map of influence. According to records, these files contain references to politicians, business leaders, academics, entertainers, and foreign figures. In many cases, the references are brief, indirect, or heavily contextual. Names appear without explanation, then disappear again, leaving behind more questions than answers. From the beginning, secrecy defined the story. Epstein's first major legal confrontation, years before his name became globally known, ended in a controversial resolution. Reports suggest that this outcome limited public access to evidence and restricted future prosecution. At the time, the details remained obscure, shielded by legal agreements and non-disclosure clauses. For many observers, this moment would later be seen as pivotal. It established a pattern in which accountability seemed deferred, and scrutiny appeared muted. As years passed, Epstein continued to travel. According to flight logs entered into court records, his private aircraft made frequent trips to major cities and remote destinations alike. Some of these flights included guests, whose names would later draw attention. The logs themselves do not explain the nature of these yatra, only that they occurred. Yet the repetition of certain names, alongside the absence of others, has fueled speculation. Investigators have noted that flight records alone cannot establish wrongdoing, but they can indicate proximity, access, and opportunity. One of the most unsettling aspects of the files is their incompleteness. Many documents remain sealed. Others were released with heavy redactions. In some cases, names appear without context, or contexts appear without names. According to legal analysts, this fragmentation is not accidental. It reflects the tension between transparency and privacy, between the public's right to know and the legal protections afforded to individuals who have not been charged with crimes. The presence of powerful names within these files has altered how the story is understood. Reports suggest that Epstein did not operate in isolation. He cultivated relationships, hosted gatherings, and positioned himself as a connector. In elite circles, access itself can be a form of currency. According to testimonies cited in court filings, Epstein offered introductions, funding, and opportunities. In return, he gained legitimacy, protection, and silence. Silence is a recurring theme throughout the Epstein files. Witnesses have described environments in which questions were discouraged and boundaries were blurred. According to sworn statements, some individuals felt pressured to comply, while others claimed they did not fully understand the nature of what they were witnessing. These accounts vary in detail and perspective, but they converge on a sense of imbalance, a power dynamic that favored one side overwhelmingly. As the files expanded, so did public attention. Journalists began tracing patterns, comparing timelines, and cross-referencing names. In doing so, they uncovered overlaps that were difficult to ignore. A financier attending academic conferences, social events, and political fundraisers in close succession. A private island appearing repeatedly in testimonies. A network of intermediaries managing logistics, travel, and scheduling. According to reports, these elements suggest an organized structure rather than random association. Yet the story resists simple conclusions. For every document that raises suspicion, there is another that complicates it. For every name mentioned, there are denials, explanations, and legal clarifications. Many individuals named in the files have stated that their interactions with Epstein were limited, professional, or misrepresented. Some have emphasized that being mentioned in a document does not imply misconduct. This ambiguity is central to the narrative. The files illuminate connections but do not always explain them. The turning point came when Epstein was arrested again, years after his earlier case. This time the charges were severe and the attention was global. Court documents released during this period brought renewed focus to the existing files and introduced new material. According to records, investigators began re-examining old evidence, interviewing witnesses, and seeking cooperation from individuals who had previously remained silent. The sudden acceleration of events created a sense of urgency. Names that had once circulated quietly were now discussed openly. Media outlets published timelines and analyses. Public pressure mounted for transparency. Yet even as information flowed, it did so unevenly. Some documents were released in batches, others delayed. Legal motions argued over what should remain sealed and what should be disclosed. Then came the moment that froze the narrative. Epstein's death in custody, officially ruled a suicide, ended the possibility of a trial that might have clarified many unanswered questions. According to official reports, procedural failures contributed to the circumstances surrounding his death. These findings, while significant, did little to satisfy public curiosity. Instead, they intensified suspicion. Without a trial, the files became even more important, serving as one of the few remaining windows into what had occurred. In the aftermath, attention shifted decisively to the names, who appeared in the records and why, which connections were documented and which were merely rumored. According to legal experts, naming alone carries weight, even without charges. It shapes reputations, influences public perception, and can alter the course of institutions. This is why the release of names has been so contentious. Some names emerged repeatedly, tied to specific locations or events. Others appeared once, briefly, then vanished from the record. According to analysts, repetition suggests familiarity, but not necessarily guilt. Context matters, and context is often missing. The absence of clear explanations has allowed speculation to flourish, filling gaps left by redactions and sealed files. The Epstein files also reveal something broader about systems of power. They suggest that influence can create layers of insulation. According to reports, Epstein's associations may have discouraged scrutiny, intentionally or otherwise. When individuals operate within networks of wealth and authority, accountability can become diffuse. Responsibility is shared, diluted, and sometimes deferred indefinitely. Victims' accounts, where they appear in the files, add another dimension. According to testimonies, many felt ignored or dismissed when they first came forward. Some described being intimidated by the scale of Epstein's connections. These accounts underscore the human cost of secrecy. Behind every document is a lived experience, often marked by fear and confusion. As civil cases proceeded against Epstein's estate and associates, more material entered the public record. Depositions, emails, and financial records offered glimpses into how operations were managed. According to court filings, payments were routed through complex structures. Properties were maintained with staff who followed instructions but claimed limited knowledge. Again, the pattern suggests compartmentalization, a system in which no single individual saw the entire picture. International dimensions further complicate the story. Epstein traveled extensively, and some records reference foreign officials and institutions. Jurisdictional boundaries have made investigations more difficult. According to experts, cooperation between countries can be slow, especially when politically sensitive names are involved. This has limited the scope of what can be conclusively established. The files also raise questions about enforcement. How did Epstein evade sustained scrutiny for so long? Reports suggest that resource constraints, legal settlements, and prosecutorial discretion all played roles. Some investigators have acknowledged missed opportunities. Others point to structural issues that make complex, high-profile cases difficult to pursue. Public trust has been deeply affected. The perception that powerful individuals may be shielded from consequences has fueled cynicism. The Epstein files, regardless of their ultimate conclusions, have become symbolic. They represent not only one man's alleged crimes, but a broader anxiety about inequality before the law. As time passes, the files continue to be revisited. New releases prompt renewed debate. Each unsealed page is examined for clues, each redaction questioned. According to commentators, the true impact of the files may lie less in what they prove and more in what they reveal about opacity. They show how much can remain hidden even in an age of information. The names that changed everything did so not because they answered questions, but because they exposed the scale of uncertainty. They demonstrated that influence leaves traces, even when actions remain obscured. They forced institutions to confront uncomfortable questions about oversight, responsibility, and silence. In the end, the Epstein files do not offer closure. They offer a record, incomplete and contested. They suggest networks without fully defining them. They document proximity without explaining intent. According to records, many questions remain unresolved and perhaps always will be. What persists is the shadow they cast, a reminder that truth, when filtered through power, often emerges slowly and never all at once. The story continues not in a single revelation, but in ongoing scrutiny. Each document unsealed, each testimony reviewed, each name reconsidered. The files remain, waiting to be read again, waiting to be understood in a context that may only become clear with time.